Hi everybody, it's Sarah Cray with Let's Make Art, and today we are doing a mini atmospheric painting.
It's so tiny.
It's so tiny and cute. Before we get into this painting, I am going to show you how you can decal your own edge of watercolor paper. And you might be like, I don't even know what that means. Well, if you buy large sheets of watercolor paper, or if you buy handmade paper, you will notice that the edge, like this sheet, this is watercolor paper, has this decal right here, this unevenness. Do you guys see that?
Like a hand-torn look.
Like a hand-torn look. This is, Michael,
Yes.
Can you actually look up why large sheets of watercolor paper have a deckled edge?
Absolutely.
I'm fairly certain it's like paper is made through like fibers put together, and I think it's just like thinning out the fibers along the edges, but so we're gonna have Michael check that. Now, but a lot of the times when you buy watercolor paper, it comes in a pad and it has squared off edges, kind of like that you see here, which is not bad, but sometimes that hand-torn edge gives it a kind of really cool, like artsy look. And so I'm gonna show you how I do that on my own, so you can create that kind of do-it-yourself deckled edge.
When they make the paper, it's these big giant screens, like a
Yes.
window screen. And the paper itself is like wet pulp, essentially. And they just push it down and then they squeeze it. And the edges that's the pulp texture on the edge.
Okay.
You can trim it, but like, why?
Yeah, why would, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, why would you trim it?
Yes. Okay. So that's what I was thinking. Perfect. So this is how I like to do a deckled edge. So this was just a piece of paper, Arches paper that I just tore a chunk off. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over. Okay. So you want to make sure that your bottom desk here doesn't have paint on it. And then now I'm working on the back of my watercolor paper. The next thing you're going to want to do is get a ruler, because you want to measure the size of your paper. Now I want this to fit inside my frame. So I'm going to have this be about 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. Okay.
Okay.
So what you don't want to do is go 3 1/4 and mark that and tear, because then you didn't leave yourself any room to tear on this edge. So you always have to like work in, and you're going to waste some paper. And I have noticed that you want to give yourself at least 1/2 inch to tear. I like to give myself about 1 inch because it makes it much easier to tear the paper. When you're just working in the slightest of margins, it's almost impossible to tear that paper. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do like 4 1/4 just to be safe. Yeah. So I'm going to go 4 1/4, and I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to mark that. And you're going to see why I hate rulers. Okay, 4 1/4.
It's one of my great joys, how much you just hate them.
I just can't do them. Okay, so now I'm going to get ready to tear. So I'm going to line up my ruler on the marks. Now, you have to have a ruler that's going to go across the paper. So if you're working on those really large sheets, you need a large ruler. You need one of those like yardsticks, okay? You're going to press down with your left hand or your right hand, depending which hand is dominant. And you want to keep this firm and still the whole time, okay? You need to put pressure on this. So if you're standing, it's actually easier to lean on this. And then you're going to pull up towards yourself. And then you want to go slowly. And if you give it a little bit of a wiggle, you're going to get a stronger tear, okay? Do you see that? How you have like a greater indent? If you were to go quick and firm, you would still have a hand torn, but it would be really straight. So if you go slow, it allows you to get a little bit more
Rustic look?
Yes. Like that probably went in too far.
Well,
You just bring it back. Okay. So then when you flip it over on the watercolor paper side, now I have this lovely hand-torn edge, okay?
Nice.
The reason why we flip the paper over is because you can see that we usually get some sort of hard line, hard edge from wherever our ruler is on the back. And I don't want that on the front of my paper. I want to keep that on the back. It also will hide any pencil marks that you make, okay? So now I have let's see how long this edge is. So that one I need to tear too. So this one we're going to, since this is hand torn, I'm going to now move this to 3 1/4. 3 1/4. And something that you kind of have to embrace here whenever you do a hand torn deckled edge is the wonkiness. Okay, that's part of it.
That's the charm.
That's the charm. So really don't stress. Okay, so I line it up. And then for me, I always put the thicker side of the edge of the paper underneath the ruler, and I'm lifting up the shorter edge or tearing the shorter edge. Does that look straight to you?
No. Maybe you should measure the top one from the straight edge. No. From the like uncut edge to the mark. No.
What?
Like line the 0 up with your pencil mark. Yeah. Okay, so you got an exact inch.
Okay.
Now I can do that on the bottom.
Oh, no. Michael, good call.
Thank you. It's because the bottom side of your tear went in a little bit when you went wonky, you know?
You're right. See, this is why I need someone to watch me. To be like, Sarah, it's going to get wonky.
I was going to let it happen. I was embracing the wonk.
Well, there's nothing wrong with embracing the wonk. All right. So now we have that.
That's actually the name of our love story book. I'm the wonk, in case you're curious.
Okay, so let's make sure. So we're at like 3 1/2. That's perfect. So now when I do this last square, as Michael has pointed out, you have hand torn edges now everywhere. So if you notice, if you look really close, usually you have a little bit of a straight edge from where that ruler was, or you can see your pencil marks go off of that instead of the edge of your paper, because as you can see, that's a huge difference between this edge and this edge. So I'm going to go off my paper. I'm going to go 3 1/2. Is that what I decided to do, or is it 3 1/4?
I thought it was 3 1/4.
Yeah, it's 3 1/4. Okay.
Listen, who cares, you know?
Listen, the reality is rulers aren't the problem. I'm the problem. 3 1/4. Okay. Line it up. Let me double check. 3 1/4. Okay. Isn't there like a measure twice, cut once?
I was just going to tell you that. The carpenter's saying, measure twice, cut once.
Okay. And now we have this beautiful hand-torn kind of deckled edge paper. Now the next thing, and sometimes like while I have this out, I'll like tear another one. So then I have 2 right now since I'm like doing this stuff. So usually I'll do like a bunch at once. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, after you have hand torn it, you're going to try it in the different orientations, because as you can see, there's different edges here that go up and down. And there is going to be a side that feels like it's right side up. Do you see how it changes?
Mm-hmm.
How it feels like, okay, that doesn't feel right. This feels pretty right.
Yeah.
That feels kind of upside down. That feels okay. I think
like
this
number
one
2.
felt
Yep.
the best.
Me too.
So you have to like play with it to see which one, okay?
You have to find its soul.
You got to find the right.
What is this accent?
I don't know.
Another thing, Sarah Cray favorite of mine is just random accents. I always try to place where they're from.
I can't do accents to save my life. I try really hard. Okay, now we're going to do our atmospheric painting. So I'm only using one color for this. I'm going to be using a Schmincke Tundra Violet. If you got the National Parks box, it is in that box. And then for me, since I'm doing an uneven edge here to go along with kind of my deckled edge painting, I'm not going to paint all 4 sides. I'm basically just doing this to hold down the paper, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do, I have a little palette here for my paint. I have the tube. I am going to be using a serrated scraper. This is actually a ceramic tool. This came in the atmospheric landscapes box. But it's just, if you have like a sharp knife, you can use a sharp knife. You'll see what I use it for.
I feel like your like kitchen steak knives would kind of achieve a similar thing. They have those little teeth on them like that.
Yeah, exactly. You want something with a little bit of teeth, a serration or something to scratch that paper off. Now this project is only going to take a few steps. We're going to wet our sky with clean water. Then we're going to smear some paint. Then we're going to move that paint into the clean water. Then we're going to add some salt. So have some salt ready. Then we'll do trees and details, okay? But atmospheric landscapes, and we have an entire course about it if you're interested, but a lot of it is just going with the flow, appreciating what's there, trying to find hints of trees or ground or something in there and responding to what's in front of you, okay?
All right.
So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet my sky just with clean water. Okay? And remember, I'm not going edge to edge. I'm leaving some gaps. Then I'm going to take my Tundra Violet and I'm just going to smear it along the left here and then a little bit up to the right. And you can see the areas where that paint has touched the water because it's starting to bleed. And I'm just going to help it. I'm going to say, come on, little fella. Go more into that water for me. Let's really let this color move. Okay, so I'm going to start pushing it up. I'm going to be avoiding the center area a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing on the right-hand side. And also, don't be afraid to you can splatter paint right here. You can do whatever you want.
Schmincke is cool paint, but the coolest thing about Schmincke is saying their name.
Schmincke.
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 Makes me want to be like a 1920s, wearing a trench coat. And
Schmincke. Okay, I'm adding some salted to my sky right now. And you're the reason why I love Tundra Violet so much is this is one color. Look at all of the different pigments that are in this color, and it's granulating. So you just get some really lovely textures and colors just by using one tube of paint. I'm going to just kind of help it smear a little bit more again. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually flip my brush around, and you'll notice that I have a point on my handle here. I'm going to use this point to do some trees. Now, whenever you do this to your paper or your painting, basically what you're doing is you're creating an indent in your paper. And so all of the pigment that's there is going to seep into that indent and it's going to create a darker mark. You will also notice that if you're creating trees and pulling, you see how much paint is right here? Mm-hmm. When I go up, I'm actually pulling that paint in there. And so on this area where it's a lighter value, I'm not going dragging all the way through because I don't want a lot of paint to be up here. Instead, I'll start at the top and go towards the bottom. And then that way I'm not bringing up a lot of paint into my sky area. Okay?
I think if I hadn't seen this paint before, I would not believe that was a single color. That's so cool.
Look at it.
Yeah.
The other really cool thing about this paint color is if you were to lift it, it lifts out and leaves blue. Watch.
What?
Do you see it?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Do you see the blue?
Cool.
So sometimes I like to go in and just kind of lift out a little bit of here and there if I want hints of blue throughout my purple, gold, peach color. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is this is just some dried Tundra Violet. You'll see that as your Tundra Violet dries on your palette, it separates into colors. That's why there's this orange and this blue right here. You can still bring it back, just mix it back together. And I'm going to start to put in some trees. Now remember, everything is wet and damp, so I'm not going to go crazy. It's basically just some background foliage.
I think it's pronounced foliage.
Foliage?
We're fancy here.
So on the left and right side, I'm just going to do some background foliage. And you'll see it's just going to disperse out. That's what I want. I want there to be this hint of something happening over there that maybe I don't know what, but it's going to be really cool, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then we're just going to let that dry. Now, one thing that I do want to do is I want to kind of look at my ground and see what happened here. I'm going to go back with my serrated scraper at the end and kind of break up this really dark area. But what I'm going to do kind of in the meantime while I'm letting this dry is just kind of put in a little bit of texture. So I'd like to take a liner brush or a really small brush and just do a little dry brush. And you'll see, depending on what happens to your paper, you're going to get something that feels like landscape. In this one, this almost looks like a river. Do you see that?
Yeah.
That was not intentional. That was just how the paint landed, and I went with it. So now I'm looking at my painting in front of me, and I'm saying, you know what? I don't really see a river, but I do see this hill right here, this kind of rocky edge. So I'm going to go with more of a rocky edge as opposed to trying to force a river into my painting. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So for the rocky edge, I'm just going to kind of like help it. And maybe we'll do some like pieces of grass here.
The crazy thing about rivers is you can't step in the same river twice. The water is always changing, always flowing.
I was hoping you would start singing.
Pocahontas, man. Some of the best music in a Disney movie.
Amazing music.
Beautiful art style, too.
Yeah.
I miss hand-drawn Disney.
I know. I hope they go back to it. It's really such a shame that they've stopped. Okay, so I'm just basically like putting in a little bit of texture or something in the white areas. Notice I'm not covering all of them up. It's not like they need to be washed out. It's more just activating the space. And with what? It doesn't really matter. It's just giving something there, okay? Now, we need this to dry faster. But look at already.
Yeah.
Like, so cool. I love this color so much. I can't describe to you how much I love this color.
10.
Like,
10
yes.
out of 10.
It's just like once you work with this, I'm like, why can't all paint colors do this? It's amazing. Now, I will say that because this is a granulating color, the salt work is very like soft or mild or
Muted, kind of.
Muted. Yeah, it's not
Subtle.
Subtle.
Yes.
Thank you. It's very subtle. But if you are using a paint color that is not granulating, that's where the salt work is really going to do some work for you. So I do it for like, fun. But you're not going to see it. You can see it a little bit right here, but the granulating color is really what's creating this texture. And salt can help you kind of mimic that a little bit if you needed to. Okay, I'm just going to scrape off the salt. All right, and now I'm going to put in some trees. So I'm going to take my liner brush. I'm just going to use the paint that's right here. Okay. And I'm just going to think about where I want my trees to be. I'm going to have one right here. I'm going to do one right here, and let's do one right here. So I start with the trunk. You also usually want to make your trees all different heights. That will add to the idea of different growths and different like perspectives. Some are farther, some are closer together. And then I'm just going to use my liner brush to do dabs all the way up in a triangle shape. So the bottom needs to be wider than the top. And if your tree gets a little bit wonky, congratulations. You did it, because trees are super wonky. I'm just using the edge of my liner brush. Liner brushes can actually make excellent foliage marks. If you have a foliage brush, you can use it, but sometimes I have a harder time controlling the foliage marks on a small area. So when it's small like this, I'll just use a liner or like a really small round or something.
I'm barely listening to what you're saying. I'm just watching Pocahontas in my head right now. That's all I want to do.
Okay, and then at the very top, it's just like the littlest. And then we'll do another one here. Again, don't be afraid of like this kind of dry, rough texture. Okay, and then this is where it's kind of up to you if you wanted to add more or not. I feel like I could probably do another tree kind of coming off the edge here and here. But the thing is I'm going to add some water to it to kind of soften the value, and that's going to make it seem like the trees are further behind. It's going to add dimension to my painting. So here I'm going to do another tree. Notice that I added water to my mixture, so it's a lighter color. The hardest thing is trying to get the trunk straight. Yeah, see how that looks farther away?
Mm-hmm.
I did it. And then let's do a tall one because while I like this tree right here, I think it's a little bit distracting. So I'm going to put one right behind it that's tall. Ooh, maybe a little bit too dark. Just rinse your brush and it will lighten. And there's nothing wrong with like adding layers to kind of like hide parts of your painting that you're not quite sure of.
All my friends do it, you know, all my paint friends.
All your what?
Paint friends
They do what?
hide the parts of their painting they don't like, you know,
Oh, yeah.
with layers.
Yeah.
All my homies. Nice.
Okay. Ooh, yeah, I like that. And then I need one over here. And don't be afraid to, like, even though we're painting within this composition, you can go outside of it. You can go outside the painted edge. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes that can be a really cool thing to do. That seems like it's leaning though. So let's try and straighten her up. Okay. And I actually really like this space right here. I'm not going to put anything in there. I feel like it leaves a space for my viewer's eye to go into. Where if I were to put something right here, I feel like it would make it just go across instead of in and through. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see how this bottom is looking here. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to do a couple little more dry brush things, some pieces of grass. You can even do like little pieces of grass next to some of your trees if you want. Okay. And let's dry it. And then I'm going to show you how to use a serrated scraper. I love this style of painting. It's so cool. It's so cool.
It's deceptively easy and freeing to do also, you know what I mean? It's not like a lot of planned steps.
Yeah. So much of it is like you have to really kind of come into it with an open mind of like, okay, you kind of have a general idea in terms of composition. That's where you're going to put your first like scrapes of paint. But then after that, it's just responding to what's in front of you. And it can totally change. And it's so much better if you just go with the flow. Okay, so I'm going to remove the tape here along. Now for my serrated scraper, it's just a tool. It just rips the paper pretty much, the first like layer of paper. So it's going to expose white underneath. So I can use that as a way to highlight something or to break up dark space. For me, I just feel like this is such a heavy area. It's too dark and thick. So I'm just going to go in with my serrated scraper and just kind of tear into my paper a little bit. And it just kind of breaks up that space a little bit.
Cool.
You can also create trees. So if I were to go this way, like branches, like hints of branches that are maybe frost covered, kind of peeking in through.
Would that thing like hurt your finger if you went a little crazy?
If you were to like really go crazy, but I'm doing this and it doesn't hurt.
I'm like worrying about your hands over there. I'm like, nah. If you are using your steak knives at home,
yeah, be careful
much
with
more
those.
careful. Yeah, those white trees are cool.
So you see how like you can create the hints of branches. You can just break up some space. It just allows some light to come into your painting that maybe wasn't there before. And when you work larger, you have a lot more freedom in terms of like what you can do with this kind of thing. Okay. But you see how like just doing that highlight in between there, it breaks up the space. It makes it feel more like you can walk through it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's it. That's our atmospheric painting. I love it. Okay. Now I'm going to put it in my cute little frame. So the nice thing is because since we hand torn it and because this frame is clear glass, you're going to be able to see that gorgeous edge come through. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, I love that.
And you can switch out this color ribbon with whatever one that you want, one that you think that will match. But this is just a really fun, simple way to make something memorable for yourself or for someone else. So I hope you have fun with this. I can't wait to see how your paintings turn out. I hope that you find the information on how to decal your own page helpful. I do want to make one note about the deckled edge. There are rulers that you can get that kind of have like a uneven edge that you kind of tear your paper across. In my experience, I don't love those because they actually crease my paper as I'm tearing it. And you know that if there's a crease in your watercolor paper, you're going to have a harder edge wherever that crease is because the paint is going to settle in that crease. So that's why I personally don't use those. But if they work for you, great. They exist. You can use them all day long. I just hand tear. It's the easiest for me. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say. So thank you so much for painting with me. If you really love this atmospheric style and landscape style, I have a course about it. You can find it at letsmakeart.com. Thank you guys so much for painting with me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.